This is a broadcast brought to you by Johnson & Johnson. You wake up in the morning, get your coffee made, and go through your morning routine. You head off to work for the day. The morning portion of your workday goes smoothly. As lunch approaches, you feel a headache coming on from your hard working all morning making phone calls and sending emails. One thing you can think of to relieve the pain, Tylenol. The sooner the pain is gone, the better, so you take the Tylenol Extra Strength capsules. Taking Tylenol Extra Strength is an everyday thing for billions of people around the world. Unfortunately, for 7 innocent people living in the Chicago area, taking Tylenol Extra Strength capsules brought them to their deaths. As public relations spokesperson for Johnson & Johnson, it is my duty to remind you all of this time and how Johnson & Johnson kept the professionalism throughout the crisis and how to learn from the experience. 6 years ago, there had been 7 deaths in the Chicago area that all happened in a fast and traumatic amount of time. We joined in mourning of Mary Kellerman, 12, who complained of waking up with a cold, Adam Janis, 27, who was thought to have passed from a massive heart attack, Janis's brother and sister-in-law, Stanley, 25, and Teresa, 19, who complained of throbbing headaches while mourning the death of Adam, and 3 others, Mary McFarland, 35, Paula Prince, 35, and Mary Weiner, 27. The one link with all of these deaths with these 7 people, they all took Tylenol Extra Strength capsules the day of their deaths. The Tylenol murders had started with 12-year-old Mary Kellerman and continued on throughout the days with the Janices, McFarland, Prince, and Weiner. The publicity about the cyanide-laced capsules immediately caused a nationwide panic. A hospital in Chicago received 700 telephone calls about Tylenol in one day. People in cities across the country were admitted to hospitals on suspicion of poisoning by cyanide. At first, there had been no connection made between the deaths of these 7 people. On testing the Tylenol Extra Strength capsules after finding out each person took at least one of the day of their deaths, it was found that the capsules these people ingested were laced with poison called potassium cyanide. There was an amount of potassium cyanide in these Tylenol Extra Strength capsules that were at a level toxic enough to provide thousands of fatal doses around the United States. The conclusions of these tests were most likely tampering with the drug in the store shelves and not while being in the factory. McNeil Consumer Products and Johnson & Johnson manufactured these Tylenol capsules. Many people had assumed that the capsules were poisoned while being manufactured in the factory. The public relations decision made as a result of the Tylenol crisis arrived in 2 phases. The first phase was the actual handling of the crisis. The comeback of both Johnson & Johnson and Tylenol was the second phase in the public relations plan. The planning for Phase 2 began almost as soon as the Phase 1 was implemented. Back when the plan was made, it was unusual for such a large company to do such a large recall of products. Many other large companies had put the companies first and not consumers, but had no luck and ended up making their reputations worse instead of owning up to it and taking the products away. Source Perrier is an example that we have learned from. Source Perrier had a crisis when it was found out that there were traces of benzene in their bottled water. Instead of taking the blame and recalling it all for the time being, Source Perrier gave the blame to an isolated incident and only recalled a small number in the US. When the benzene was found in waters in Europe, there was a worldwide recall of the product, and it was found out that consumers around the world were drinking contaminated water. Source Perrier was very harshly judged by the media. Johnson & Johnson had an active role in the media to keep customers away from using their Tylenol brand. They called for a massive recall of their product by recalling more than 31 million bottles of Tylenol Extra Strength. McNeil and Johnson & Johnson had offered replacement capsules to the people who had purchased the Tylenol Extra Strength and rewarded anyone who had information leading to why these capsules had been tainted with the poison. Luckily, after testing, it was found that the potassium cyanide poisoning was done after the Tylenol Extra Strengths were out of the factory. Tylenol's market share had actually rebounded, and the tarnished image of the brand Johnson & Johnson had been significantly repaired. Because of this incident, and because the Tylenol brand has 1.2 billion analgesic market, their market had plunged from 37% to 7% during this. Phase 2 of their plan was to make a comeback with their products. Many people had stopped buying the Tylenol products. Tylenol had handled the situation as positively as they could after hearing of 7 deaths brought on by their own products. The pharmaceutical and food industries dramatically improved their packaging, instituting tamper-proof seals, which included foil seals and other features that would make it obvious if a consumer had foul play with the capsules. McNeil Consumer Products offered $2.50 off coupons that were good to put towards any Tylenol product. Also, the salespeople here at McNeil made a new pricing program into effect by giving consumers discounts on their products as high as 25%. With this, we added a new advertising program, which was launched in 1983. Over 2,250 sales people from Johnson & Johnson domestic affiliates were asked by Johnson & Johnson to make presentations to people in the medical community. These presentations were made by the millions to promote support for the reintroduction of Tylenol. The Tylenol comeback was a great success. Many executives attribute the success of the comeback to the quick actions of the corporation at the onset of the Tylenol crisis. They think that if Johnson & Johnson had not been so direct in protecting the public interest, Tylenol capsules would not have reemerged so easily. These improvements in packaging had soon spread to all other over-the-counter medications. After fixing the bottles for better protection, the company also introduced a new version of the pills, called the caplet. This pill is also coated with a slick and easy-to-swallow gelatin, but is much harder to tamper with than the old capsules, which could easily be opened and contaminated. The U.S. Congress passed a bill to make tampering with over-the-counter medicine a federal offense. As you can see, we have come here today to continue to spread this story of Tylenol Extra Strength capsules, because the crisis can help out large and small companies all over the world. We like to show that major companies can make mistakes or products get tampered with, but there are ways to overcome. Without this crisis, the over-the-counter medications would not have had such great protection from contaminations. One bad thing can lead to more positive things and new learnings. We are not happy about what happened in the Chicago area 6 years ago, but we are happy about the positive aspects that came out of this crisis. Thank you for listening in on this broadcast.